Okay, this means
Okay,
the recording has started,
great.
right? Um,
Let's start
and
then.
and
Yeah.
cool. All right.
You want to say something?
No, I'm just nervous as to. So take
Hey,
the lead, please.
this is two people chatting, man. That's it. Like, there's no other audience, so we can do whatever we want. Oh,
Great.
you've done it like what 100 times already over phone, so just a repeat of the same.
Oh, cool.
And I
All
feel so
right.
super comfortable with you, so nothing to be worried
Great.
about. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Let's
Okay.
go.
So welcome to Content Factory, folks. So after a long hiatus, we are back. I have a very special friend with me, who is going to be with us for the future of Content Factory. Introducing RD. I'm calling him RD, and his name is Rudresh Dahiya. Hey, man.
Hi. Wow.
Hey.
Okay. Right.
So
This is yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
go on, please introduce.
Oh, introductions we're doing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, happy to be here. Largely, I think I'll be sort of trying to navigate the podcast with Gautam. Let's see how this goes.
Ye-
Um, yeah.
yeah. So to give you a brief introduction about RD, he's somebody who works in the social sector. He works for the people, betterment of people, brings in technology for the betterment of people. That's the area that he works in. And yeah, he's somebody who has a lot of similarities with me in terms of consuming content. He consumes a lot of podcasts. He watches a good bunch of movies. He reads a lot of articles. So we share a lot of similar interests, and that is one of the things that brought us together to creating this podcast. And as you know, Content Factory is all about recommending good content out there. So more people we have consuming quality content, we can, our recommendations obviously get better. So yeah, welcome RD. It's great to have you here. And
Thanks. This was a very. I have God complex now.
so
Yeah.
so I'm expecting a lot of humor here, since you are the in-house comedian and in-house musician.
What?
So
Okay.
So yeah,
Yes.
so so we are done with introduction. So let's move to the some of the
Yes.
topics that caught our attention this week.
Yeah. So the first
And
first topic has to be, I think it has to be the Cricket World Cup, the T20 World Cup.
oh yes.
So
What a
any thoughts?
a
How?
lot of thoughts. A lot of
Yeah.
thoughts here. I mean, to be honest, when it started rolling out,
Mm,
say a month back, 4 weeks back, I didn't expect a lot because T20 World Cups usually becomes a very repetitive process because there are a lot of leagues now, T20 leagues. People are very
yeah.
much used to people playing a lot of T20 cricket round the year, right? So I was thinking, what better can a T20 World Cup offer, right, to a person like me who rigorously follows cricket a lot, and also the fact that Cricket World Cup now happens 2 years in 2 years, right, in 2 years gap.
Mm,
So which means it's not that it's not like a 4 years gap where you get to see international players coming in combating in a multinational tournament. This is more frequent now, so everybody's used to seeing people performing, and because of the COVID, the previous World Cup just finished in 2021, so it's only a year now. It got delayed and it happened 2021, so
right.
it has only been years since the last World Cup got finished. But the common thread of this World Cup and the previous World Cup has been the fact that India lost out again, and that's a very sad aspect of it. I was
Yeah.
super excited in the initial part. Well, how excited were you in the run up to the World Cup?
I think I was this India Pakistan match was really the one that really got me into this, because the
Yeah.
last over, I think everyone was talking about it, and it happened to fall on Diwali, so everyone was like, "Mera Diwali to ab aaj hi ho gaya," because of the World Cup match.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so many people wanted this to happen in finals, also something around that.
Yeah.
But the way it turned out, one comment I feel have been going through a lot of Twitter threads also. Everyone is like, we need to understand the importance of young
Hmm.
sports person, right?
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
they can contribute better.
Hmm.
And what do you think about that? Do you think like age has become a factor, which is definitely, is it affecting the format as such?
Yeah. I think age is one factor, and along with the age, the other factor is the mindset to which they approach this format of the game, right? So the opinion that I have of the Indian style of approaching T20s is that it's very outdated now. Because if you look around, the teams that have been successful in T20 format have been the teams who've adopted so-called modern style of batting, right? And modern style of playing cricket as a whole. So
Yeah,
when I say modern cricket, what I mean is a very aggressive, very goal oriented, team oriented approach to batting. So you can't basically, if you're starting the batting, you can't play slowly. You can't. There is no concept of laying a base, or there's no concept of being an
yeah,
anchor. You start hitting from the ball one. You start showing intent, and you create the team in a way that you're batting deep. So if you're batting deep, then players up top have more liberty to take the risk and go for the riskier shots, and get better rewards. And you start putting up in your mind, you start putting a higher score as a target score, and
mm,
there you're presenting yourself a greater chance of winning, right? And India has been especially bad in this. India's top three or top four, except for Sky, Pandya, and Virat, have been
yeah,
very outdated in their approach. They've been consuming a lot of balls. They've been, to the extent that I've seen in some matches, KL Rahul leaving the ball. First four balls, he's been leaving the ball, which is unimaginable in cricket, in T20 cricket, because every ball is an event. So yeah,
right, right.
I was really disappointed seeing that. I was just disappointed because it was the same approach that led us to knocking ourselves out in the previous World Cup. And I was really hopeful about this World Cup because in between the period of from the 2021 World Cup, end of 2000 World Cup, till this period in the start of the beginning of the World Cup, we were really playing aggressive cricket. Rohit Sharma and
Yeah,
Rahul Dravid has come out and and expressed themselves and said that we're going to change the way we play. We're going to be more aggressive about things. But yet when at the time when that crucial match happened, they went back to their old ways, and certainly apparently it didn't work well. So yeah, a little bit of disappointment there, not because we lost, but the way we lost, right?
correct.
Yeah,
But also, like, this is from like the batting point of view. I
right.
feel from bowling, Arshdeep is someone who, like, I wasn't even aware that okay, this person is there in the team, and surprising sort of performance. Largely, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, this guy has been a proven. If you've been following IPL, this guy has been a proven performer over there,
Right.
consistently turning up for his franchisee Kings XL and Punjab, bowling all the tough overs, up top and in the middle overs and in the death overs. So he's pretty much a rounded bowler like Bumrah, right? So when we
Mm.
lost out and when we came to know that Bumrah got injured, everybody was like panicking. Okay, do we have a person who can come in and fill in the death over slot, right? But the way Ashdeep has taken up that mantle, even though he's so young, I think he's in the early 20s, if I'm not wrong, and with very
He's
less
23
international
years
experience.
old.
Yeah, 23 years. Imagine a 23-year-old guy who's turning up on world's biggest stage, playing for one of the world's biggest teams, bowling one of the toughest overs against one of the biggest hitters of the modern day cricket, and
Right.
making them, keeping them silent. And that's something. Let's say something about that person's character also. So I think huge plus for India in that sense to have Arshdeep as emerging as one of the top performers in the tournament. Although I would say that he got very less support from other
Mm.
bowlers of the team, especially Bhuvanesh Kumar and Shami. And I wouldn't blame them too much because, to be very honest, they are not your top T20 bowlers in my mind.
Mm.
Because Bhuvaneshwar Kumar is that kind of a bowler who bowls upfront. He gets a lot of swing if the circumstances assist it, but if not, it's just going to be a very passive way of bowling, and batters can easily go for runs in that. And Shami, it's not, he's a very good one day bowler and test bowler, but not really
Right.
a T20 bowler because he doesn't have the variety that requires of him of a success bowler in T20. So yeah, this is what I feel about the bowling. And
Mm.
spinners wasn't effective much because Australia isn't known for spin bowling,
Yeah.
and with both of them being finger spinners, which is even more difficult in Australian pitches. We I think we got our selections wrong because we didn't pick Chahal also, who's a rich spinner. So yeah, that's what I feel about the bowling overall. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, correct. I also was not very surprised when I saw South Africa sort of lose to Netherlands, I think.
Oh yeah,
That was like, I mean, I think they're labeled as sort of chokers or something,
right,
right?
correct,
Which,
correct.
yeah, that was
Yes.
one.
So
Yeah.
South Africa has a rich history of losing out these matches, right? These crazy matches, either due to some rain or some natural intervention, or some either through a divine intervention or some from their own inabilities. They find themselves, they find ways to lose these matches, these critical knockout matches, right? They
Hmm.
would suddenly, from a position of winning, they would just knock themselves out. So this was such a case, right, where some a match with Netherlands was like more or like procedure for them, like not even a contest for them if you look at it in that sense.
Yeah.
But yet they managed to lose it. And one particular image that stays in my mind is the catch that is taken by, I can't recall the guy's name. He's a South African origin player playing for
Okay.
Netherlands. I think it's Van der Merwe or something. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. So he's
Okay.
a sort of a veteran. He played for South Africa before, and now he's playing for Netherlands because I think his parents are from Netherlands or something.
Huh.
And there is this infam batsman in South African side called David Miller, and he hit this shot. He tried to pull a bouncer of some sort, and then the ball goes long way up and it swirls and it drifts. So and this guy is running in towards the ball with his back against the batsman. So it's a very tough catch to take, right? So
Hmm.
you're looking up and then you're seeing your ball is on top of your head, and there
Right.
is very it's very hard to like judge that catch, and yet he managed to to hold on to that catch, and that says something. And and the way Netherlands came together and they celebrated it, and also the fact that because of this win, now Netherlands gets a qualification for the next World Cup. They don't have to pay the qualification match, and
Right.
and and it's a huge plus, right? And it's a huge plus for the team. And to me, and what it goes on to show in a larger sense of the game is that there are a lot of smaller teams that are ready to take
Yeah.
it. They're ready to be there at the level of the top teams if they are given enough opportunity to compete, right?
Hmm.
And I think this is the right time for it because there are a lot of T20 leagues which has enough opportunities for everyone. Not like you have one global tournament now. You have multiple global tournaments as T20 leagues across different nations. So if you are able to showcase your talent in such in a World Cup like this, you will have takers everywhere. So I think Netherlands cricket and other smaller teams like Ireland, Scotland, and all those teams can
Hmm.
only grow from here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely something ICC needs to also look at.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's that's great in terms of a topic that we have covered. Let's move to the next one. So we have the next topic as Twitter and Elon Musk. So
So so ironically it's been trending in Twitter, right? Elon Musk has been trending in Twitter ever since
yeah,
he has announced the takeover.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
also ironic. Like he made his Twitter handle as like hotline, some complaint hotline and
Ah,
stuff. And then
yes.
people are complaining on Twitter about Twitter, and it's just like inception of some level. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's definitely entertaining. I don't know about like how futuristic it is going to be. Because a lot of people, I think what ended up happening was a lot of people were like, $8 or $10 was it earlier? That it's lots, it's a lot of money. Then someone was like, "Nahi, make this $8." And a lot of like fake accounts
Yeah,
started coming up with that,
right.
and even Elon Musk had their own fake account. So
Yes.
that got very difficult. I don't know what was the point behind having this blue tick commercialized that way,
I
but
think that I think for me, for as far as I understand this, it has been the point behind is pretty simple. Is the fact that you, you need to. I mean, if you are the CEO of Twitter, you're looking for a revenue stream. You're looking for money, and given how people are against having advertisements, they're more inclined. They my sense is there'll be more inclination to pay for a service like that rather than to have a feed full of advertisements, right? So it's a simple matter of having that revenue stream. And I don't know if this is the right way forward. Only the time will tell. Because for me, as I understood the whole idea of blue tick has been, it's a matter of status and pride and your clout in the internet economy and larger internet pop culture, right? Whether it's almost like you've made it in that sense. If you're an influencer or if you're a celebrity, if you have a blue tick and your
Yeah,
Twitter account, it almost signifies your clout. So I think that will change because now everybody will get a shot at having that blue tick, right?
correct.
So
It's
I think
also like I feel I don't. I
hmm,
just remember this from one of the Naval Ravikant's conversations, where it's
yeah.
like there are two sort of societies. One is like status based society,
Ah,
and the other one is more like you're trying to make progress in a different direction with just knowledge base.
yeah.
So it's definitely that game being played.
Right.
Um, but do you feel like generally like what Twitter is right now and what Elon Musk is thinking of Twitter will be, or the idea, is there some alignment that you feel is possible? And if yes, then what kind of future do you think this
Um,
poses?
It's a very interesting question. Right? I mean, Twitter for most people has been this very liberating space where they come and express themselves either for good or for bad, right? A lot of people who abuse it, I agree, but there are a lot of great content out there, and and what it does is it sort of democratizes the communication of people, and you can reach out to anybody you want if you wish to, and of course there is still the choice and whether that person want to respond to you or not. But the fact that you can just be you have a shot at having a conversation with somebody who will never be able to reach out otherwise. So
Correct.
that platform gives, I think that's the most amazing aspect of Twitter for me. That
Mm,
you like somebody and then you can interact with that person and there's a possibility that they'll reply back, and there is a unique connection happening from that point, and you are able to reach out to an audience that are far beyond your echo chamber or your bubble, right? So I think that is a very unique aspect of Twitter. I hope with this taking over of Twitter that doesn't change.
right.
I think that remains because that essentially is what the soul of Twitter. If I Because I'm an active Twitter user, I use Twitter as something like expressing my ideas whenever I have an idea, whenever I have a thought, whenever I am listening to something, reading something, and I have something to share to the larger world. I instantly tweet it. So it also becomes like a second mind space for me, or an archival space for me.
Mm,
And I have had great experiences doing that because I've had people to responding to it in a positive way. I've had people coming out and say, "Look, I love your work. I love what you're doing. I love what you're sharing. Be it about cricket or about books I read and stuff like that." So yeah, I hope the whole takeover doesn't change that, and that's my only hope. That's my only recommendation to Elon Musk if he's hearing this podcast. Yeah.
I'm sure he's making notes right now. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think also like the whole idea of the character limit, I
Yeah.
feel that really pushes people to, put their ideas in a very concrete format,
Correct. Correct.
which I feel is what I try to use Twitter mostly for. But yeah, this is definitely something to look forward to as to
Yeah.
how this space emerges. And
Yeah, I
I'm
think.
gonna do, yeah, sorry, yeah,
Yeah, go on,
please.
go on, go on, go on. Sorry.
No, no, I was gonna say something else, but please continue if you had
No, I
any
mean,
more thoughts.
I was just saying that speaking of Twitter, so another thing that recently come out of the news related to Twitter has been the layoffs, right? Not just Twitter, but multiple companies in the tech space have been laying off people. Have you been following the news, Adi?
Man, I was just gonna say that I'm
Okay.
gonna do a better job with the segue this time, and that is where I was going. But hey, that's
Okay.
great. Let's
Yeah.
move on to our next topic:
Yes.
layoffs and post-COVID employment. What is
Yeah.
COVID? Anyway, so yeah, I mean, since this is something, I mean, obviously the question has to come to you because you
Hmm.
are sort of our specialist in the area of human
Right.
resources. First, I would
Yes.
like to like ask you why these layoffs are happening, like out of like just like a basic understanding, then we can build.
So I would just give you a broad. I mean, every layoff, every set of layoffs that would happen is always context specific, organization specific, right? So it's very hard to come to hard to say that okay, this could be one reason or this would be the one biggest reason why. But generally, if I list out the reasons for layoffs, one could be, major reason behind layoff is that suddenly the role that the person is playing has become redundant, or because the project associated with that role or the work that is associated with that role has become redundant, because suddenly the organization that is promoting that project or the work doesn't see a lot of profitability work, or doesn't see a lot of futures, even either the present profitability or a future profitability in that work. So it's like a cascading set of decisions, right? So you decide to cut off a certain project or certain work, then all the people that are involved in that kind of a work will get impacted, right? So that's generally how it happens. And I also believe, and I'm not an expert in this, but there is a lot of news around the funding winter. So when I say funding winter, what I mean is suddenly the capital is available for investing in startups, by angel investors, venture capitalists, and all those investors that are generally investing in startups and the established companies. That has come down a lot because of recession, because of post-COVID recovery, because of the war, because of many other macroeconomic reasons, right? Um, and because of this, the whole butterfly effect, you must be familiar with it.
Yeah,
The whole cascade of how the economy, one act in one part of the economy impacting the other part of the economy, lack of demand, everything combined together to forming a perfect storm, and that leading to organizations laying off people because they feel like at that rate, they won't be sustainable. They won't be able to do justice to people who are in those roles who are being laid off, because the other thing would be then continuing with those people and not having enough work for those people, and later it jeopardizing the whole growth of the company itself, right? So that's the other side of, if you want to look at the positive side. I mean, it's a very insensitive thing to say from a person who's being laid off, but from a larger organizational perspective, it's also a question of survival, right? It's also a question of how can you survive this tough time and move ahead with without bankrupting your company.
hmm.
So right, that's the other side of things. But nothing can replace the grief and the sorrow that a person would go through, who has just lost his job, and in such a time where the market is also not really great. The labor market is also not great, so it's not easy to
Yeah.
get a job either. So yeah. So
Yeah, no, these are very interesting points because building on that only, I
mm,
remember reading this on I think LinkedIn somewhere that
mm,
one of the layoffs that Meta or Facebook did was one of the employees that they laid off actually had I think multiple degrees like specializations also from like reputed institutes like Stanford or Harvard. I'm
mm,
not exactly sure which one it was, but the whole idea behind that was that now I feel for people also
mm,
having multiple streams of income is going to be something which largely will have to focus on because as you can see like even such a
mm.
person who has so many degrees and so many
Yeah.
specializations is being laid off. So I think the world definitely probably is already starting to move in that direction with the creator economy being like boosted as we go.
Yeah,
So
yeah, true. I agree to that because there have been some great steps from Indian employers also. So the whole concept is called moonlighting, right?
okay.
Where if you're having a dual employment while you're working, if you're having the second employment while you're working for an organization already, the conventional stand is that that's not really taken positively by the original employer. So they would like, okay, you can only choose one. You choose one, and most likely that employee would be dismissed from the first job, right? uh,
Mm.
however, given that the employee preferences are changing because now employers now realize that employees can have multiple interests, multiple skill sets, and not every skill set of them can be of value for one employer. So why can't you
Right.
have in their spare time, why can't they have their other skills and suits for the other employer who is not really a competitor in their space, but maybe like
Right.
some different other company. So in such a case, can you really allow them? Right, that's also a question. And that in effect also what it does is, um, it is not putting a lot of expectation on the first company to be providing a higher income to the employee, because the need for the income also can come from the second, the gap, that is the income gap, can also be um, provided by the second company, right?
Yeah.
So so that I think that's a win-win in a certain way, but also it has, these policies have to be very careful while being laid out, because if it's a commercial company, because there's a lot of sensitive information handled by the employee, because most of the employees handle a lot of sensitive information, and it's also the time that is spent on the work. It's a very thin line, right? How much time are you able to, because the more you grow, there is no defined time limit for a given role, right? It's a fluid kind of a work schedule, right? So the question of where your current job ends and where the other job starts, also very a gray area, right? um
Definitely. Yeah,
right.
yeah. So ideally, like basically, the idea is that as an individual, at least who's starting their career,
Yeah.
it's more beneficial to build like multiple skills that you can
Correct.
later on
Yes.
monetize than
Yeah.
just going very specialist. In this day and age, that would be the best recommendation, at least in a post-COVID world.
True.
But also
True.
one more thing, when it comes to sort of the way we look at skills,
Yeah.
the recent development in the genetically modified mustard,
Hmm.
I hope you've been following that also. So the whole idea is that recently we came up with the genetically modified mustard, which is going to be herbicide resistant, right?
Yeah.
Ideally,
Yeah.
the crop itself will not require any other spraying,
Hmm.
but the problem which this sort of brings to us is the fact that there is a considerable amount of labor force that was employed earlier for the
Hmm.
task of spraying these herbicides.
Yeah.
So, what happens to them? And this is a conversation which can then span across to like a lot of other, what do you say, fields of work. Like, for example, when you look at like silk sari, right? Silk sari,
Correct.
specifically in the state of Bhagalpur,
Yeah.
where it's the silk state of, sorry, silk city of our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those workers, as the cost of those saris
Hmm.
are very high compared to the saris that are easily made using the machines.
Yeah.
They find themselves in a tough spot.
Right.
So, what do you
True.
think like is sort of the solution apart from, now the government might want to like train them and help them find different jobs, but what kind of solutions can come up with this problem?
Yeah, it's a very ongoing thing, right? Genetically modified plants and organisms, right? It's a very it's a topic where you can take any stand, and then you have solid arguments from both sides. That's kind of a topic, right? So there's a clear answer to this, of course, because on the one side, government has a responsibility, or the public at large has a responsibility to support people who are in farming, including the laborers, right? So it's their livelihood we're questioning by introducing this genetically modified crop. Whereby this basic to give you a context, this crop just eliminates the need for laborers to come and pluck the herbicides, because the plants now
Correct.
are themselves self-occupied, to prevent herbicides from attacking them, right? Sorry, herbs from attacking them.
Yeah.
Now, when you introduce something like this, obviously you don't farmers the farm owners, they don't require the help of the laborers to pluck the herbs. Now,
Yeah.
what happens in such a case is, on one hand, the farmers are benefited by not having to employ a lot of laborers for this very minimal labor count, and then they are able to get back higher margin on their crops, right? So good for farmers, but at the same time the laborers are losing out on their livelihood, and when laborers are losing out on livelihood at a mass scale, the demand for these crops also will drop, right? So now how will that economy will play out? Will only the time will can only tell, because on one hand the demand is dropping, on the other hand the margins increasing. So it's like a cycle where everybody needs to be prospering, otherwise the economy won't go forward. So that's sort of a cyclical thing. There's no simple explanation to this. But what I can think of as a long term solution is that maybe government can identify this as a real challenge and take steps to maybe reskill these people, maybe give them enough resources to either to become farmers or to become some sort of a addition to the farming that is not relied on their manual work. So it can be like a food, it can be like support to start food processing units, or to be able to drive some of the technological interventions in farming. It can be like running a tractor, or having to use some of the harvesters out there, harvesting machines out there, or in any of this, enabling them to be part of the farming value chain, which is not really affected by this step. So I think that's the easiest and then none, but yeah, that's the thought that's coming to me now. Yeah,
So that's like the long-term solution,
long
which
term
would probably
solution.
work.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. That makes sense.
Hmm.
I think this whole idea of sort of the skill that is currently being available being sort of redundant in the context that we're
Hmm.
speaking is something which is faced multiple times by like humans in general across, as we used some of the examples right now.
Hmm.
But another interesting example is not from a skill point, but from an output point.
Yeah,
So this is what I feel around the lines of, let's say, tea, right?
yeah,
Tea as a commodity itself, when it's consumed across, it's only consumed across very specific areas. And if you look at the sort of the arc of the consumption, it's getting low and low.
yeah.
So the people who are working on the fields, collecting the leaves and everything, that's another thing. Where would you want to sort of, sort of create opportunities for them? So one
Right,
thing was that you create ownership for them by giving them that specific land.
correct.
So those are some of the things that really come to my mind when I think of this particular problem. But
Yeah,
let's move on to our next topic, which is, I think, around largely economy, but more
yeah,
specific to our government and government jobs.
yeah.
So yeah,
So this is something that came to my mind when I read this article by
okay,
Vivek Kaul. Is a somebody whom I follow a lot. He comes
yeah.
often in one of my favorite podcasts. This is called Seen and Unseen. He's a regular guest over there.
Wow,
So he's
seen
an
and the unseen. I think a special shout out I have to say, because Amit Verma is probably the
God.
best podcaster we know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's a god of public policy podcasts in India for sure. We both have been following him
Well,
for a long, long time. Yeah.
Elon and Amit, if you are listening, then
So
yeah.
yeah, so this article is somewhat personal to me also, because I've spent some time preparing for government exams, right? And so I know what it feels to be part of that race. So what this article talks about is why in the love for government jobs among Indian people are not paid for Indian economy. So the reason why he says that is because if you look at the age in which people appear for government jobs and the time they spend pursuing that, a large amount of that time, during which they pursue this, they are unemployed. And which means, even if you look at the data, it is as high as 40 to 45% of the total working population between the age of 18 to 25. So what it means is that half of that population in India is not working but preparing for some exam or the other. What it also means is that one, you're losing out on their time to work and earn money and progress in life and contributing to the economy, and thereby creating demand for the economy, and thereby creating the supply that is required for the by the manufacturing sector, and so on, the whole cascading effect of the economy. Also, the time that they would otherwise be building their skill set to get a job that is more maybe not as great. I mean, in the sense that not in the typical sense of a government job, but still good. So what happens here is because it's investing so much time into the preparation of a government job, by the
Hmm.
time they're out of it, they don't really have a backup option, right? They're too much invested in this, their time and money and energy and the mindset is too corrupted now to go
Right.
back looking for a better private job. So I think it, in a way, makes a lot of sense for me looking back, and also at a
So
macro level for me as well.
also
Mm.
on this point of government jobs, sorry to cut you
Mm.
there, but like
Yeah.
the exam itself, right? For
Mm.
in your case, like you prepared for UPSC, right?
Correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
the whole idea of UPSC exam itself having that particular format, which I think most of my friends who also are preparing would agree that there is a lot of factor of rote learning,
Hmm.
but also the exam is sort of designed in a way which is very like outdated in the format itself, right?
Right.
What do you think that is that something where like then if people change that, if government decides to sort of improve the format of the exam, will this create some difference?
Um, yes and no. I think a format
Hmm.
change would is certainly be will certainly be helpful in the sense that it can be a more rounded exam. Also testing for testing for some of the skills that is actually will be used in a role, in a civil service role, right? So in a
Hmm.
civil service role, as per my understanding, some of the skills that is stated is how well are you able to make decisions, given the limited number of data points that you have, given the limitations you have. So your managerial skills, your decision making skills, your time management skills, your ability to manage human resources, natural resources, your budgeting skills. So everything that like pretty much a CEO of a company would be needing to have the skill sets.
Hmm.
You're expecting it from a senior level or a junior level. I mean, regardless of the level, anybody who's
Right.
handling a significant post in civil services, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you are looking for that sort of a skill set, why can't you have a format that tests that skill set, right? Not just the theoretical knowledge of a certain subject, but
Right.
also through case studies or some exam that tests their managerial skill set also, right? I think that's one area that I would like to emphasize. And secondly, what I would also have been thinking about is if you're giving the aspirants an option to write for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, then obviously they are not going to let go of those number of attempts, right? Generally,
Hmm.
that's the tendency. If you have an option to pursue, why not? Maybe not
Yeah.
fourth time lucky, fifth time lucky, or sixth time lucky, right? That's
Hmm.
the general. It's like a lottery system, right? Oh, I'm not getting it now. Maybe I'm getting it later, right? So I think the reduction of number of attempts could be one.
Hmm.
And the third point, if one can implement would be the transfer of marks, right? So if you're writing an exam this year,
Hmm.
um, why do you need to write an exam the next year? Because you've already proven your skill set, right? It's very little. I believe that very little will change over a period of 1 year in terms of skill set. If you're qualified in 2021, I'm pretty sure you're qualified for that same role in 2022 as well,
Right.
unless you have something very unfortunate happening with your body or mind, right?
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so I think
Uh,
that saves a lot of time. That's in summary. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. No, that makes sense. And another thing, this is probably from one of the episodes of the Seen and the Unseen only. The guest I think was Mahima Vashisht, who's
Correct.
also known for her newsletter called Womening in India.
Yeah.
So she shared her journey through the civil services, and another thing which also is there that when someone goes and appears for such an exam and clears it also, there is
Hmm.
always the intention of clearing the exam
Yeah.
is very different from the job you get there.
Yeah.
So for example, as an individual, you always wanted to be an IAS officer, right? And you
Hmm.
don't get that, but you get some other post. There's
Yeah.
always that inferiority or such complex is always running there, at least in the forces, as
Hmm.
what was discussed in that episode. So I feel that sort of a love, for example, in forest services, I think the exam itself is completely sort of different there. So
Right.
that makes difference in the sense the intention. again is sort of pulled there.
Yeah.
So maybe that could also, affect the sort of motivation to sort of clear such exams, or you know be in those forces.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the funny incidents that I can recall now that you brought up this whole hierarchy up within the civil services, right? I
Uh,
remember this conversation. It was something that my friend said that he had with one of his relatives. This friend of mine who got through, I think either IRS or IRPS or something. And remember IRPS or IES. If you look at the ranks, and
mm,
if you look at the difference of marks, it is hardly a few marks, there may be 10, 15 at the max. The difference between these marks, between these ranks are in decimals, right?
yeah,
So, which also is in a way saying that there isn't a lot of difference between the talent which these guys have, right? So yeah, so the conversation that I'm referring to is he's meeting his relatives and he's like, okay, where are you working and all that? And he replies, I'm working for so and so. And suddenly this whole expression changes from their side, and they become very sad and very apologetic and says, oh, you didn't get through IAS, you didn't get through IPS. Oh, such
right.
a sad state to be. And then and this guy is like, oh man, I've worked so hard and I'm here and you know for an outsider they just don't realize how tough it is. They just don't realize how tough it is to be part of that list of 900 or 1000 people who are just separated by a few
Yeah,
marks. So the society, I mean, they always be hierarchical, right? Their view of doing, there'll always be there is always somebody who is doing better or they look at. I mean, there are people who will look at life as half empty, and you should not. We can't be looking at. We can't be taking that as a parameter to judge our success. Either in civil services preparation or outside. Yeah, I think that's the larger takeaway that I had after 3 4 years of attempting civil services. Yeah.
no, that's very sort of a practical example that you
Yeah.
provided there. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Largely, I feel it's a process that evolves with the society, and maybe the society evolves with the process also. It's a
Yeah.
two-way street, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah,
I often felt that if the ultimate objective is to enhance the efficiency of civil services, to make it a um, better set of people who can deliver better at their role, they should have
yeah,
more lateral entries. They should have more experts coming in as people incumbents, role holders, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you're heading a trade agency and if you're an IAS officer, you'd have on one level below you'd have all the experts coming in on a contractual basis working for you. You need to be an expert to command their respect. You need to be an expert to guide them and confront them, challenge them creatively, right? You can't be somebody who's just a paper pusher who just no matter how good you are at picking up the subject topic, you that nothing can replace years of experience, years of research going into that particular field. And I think at least for specialized areas like that, you need experts, lateral entry folks who will fill in those roles, who's now currently filled by journalists. And this is not to say
yeah.
the journalist doesn't belong. There is no role for journalists at all. There are certainly roles that require journalist people to be occupying there. But for certain roles, I think lateral entry folks are better suited. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, yeah.
Makes sense. Um, cool. Moving on to our next, and I guess a bit lighter topic
Yes, I
is,
think let's talk about some movies now,
yeah.
huh?
So this is the movie Kantara. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Kanatra,
it's
yes.
a Kannada movie,
Kannada movie.
and yeah, let's. So what is this movie about? Like I've been hearing all about it.
So it's a very hard movie to define. In the sense, it's directed by this guy called Rishabh Shetty. He's the lead actor as well,
Okay.
and he along with somebody called Rakshit Shetty has been sort of creating a new age of Kannada films. So what I mean to say is that earlier Kannada films used to be the kind of movies that you would associate, the typical pot boilers,
Mm,
formalized films where you know the story even before you start watching by looking at the poster. But these guys, along with few other folks, have been changing the way of storytelling. They've been very forthcoming in picking up very grounded topics, relatable topics, more aesthetically pleasing way of storytelling. Open to experimenting with the cinematic styles, right? And Kantara is in many ways an extension of that. And the most surprising part of Kantara's success here is that it has gone on to become a blockbuster, right? And a global blockbuster. If I'm right, it has broken a lot of records, including the biggest South Indian movies, one of the biggest South Indian movies releasing this year, right?
Right.
And it's very rare for a Kannada film. I mean, of course, KGF has done it before. I mean, you do have precedents, but still, Kantara is not a KGF in that sense because it's not a it's not a very mass film where you have one central character hogging all the attention. You have slow motion walks and these
Mhm.
sleek action sequels or something like that. It's not like that. It's a very grounded film. It tells the story of a community and the people
So
living in the
are we going to spoilers? So if we
Oh,
are,
sorry.
then
I should be doing it right. Okay, I'll just give you a broad sense of it without revealing any details. So it's about a community and the conflict with community and the nature and on and the government. So it's like a three-way conflict. On one hand, you have the community, and on the other hand you have the government, and then on the third side you have the nature. So it's about how this conflict plays out in the lives of people, and they
right,
have few central characters. And along with that, you on top of that you add a layer of southern Karnataka's traditions, their
right,
tribal traditions, their symbolism, and yeah, and that's in summary what the movie is about. I urge everyone who wants to enjoy a good film, go and watch this film, if possible in theaters, because the visuals are so great, the music is so lovely, the images are so rich, the characterization, the sound, and the whole experience itself needs to be, it has to be a theatrical experience as opposed to a small screen one. So I would recommend everybody to go and watch this. Yeah, yeah. So
awesome.
that's yeah,
Yeah,
that's the movie suggestion for me.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, moving on to the other one, I think one other topic now that we've covered the theatrical part, I'll move on to the one that I really enjoyed in the smaller screen. Um, this is something called Drive to Survive, and I'm sure a lot of listeners already have seen this because it's a global sensation already. The reason why it's a global sensation is because it covers motorsports, specifically F1, in a way that has never been covered before. Right? F1 has been, it's a global sport, but it's always been famous among a very niche set of people, right? I mean, you'll find hardcore fans, but it was not as popular as something like a football or a tennis or something like that, right?
right,
And it had geographical limitations also. So F1 would be famous in those countries where you would have the F1 tracks, and people who were competing from their countries in the F1 race. Obviously, those countries will follow the F1 for obvious reasons.
right,
But what the documentary does is that it helps the sport to transcend those boundaries, and go to, for example, F1 was never popular in US. NASCAR used to be popular in US, but F1 just made US because it got released. This documentary got released in Netflix, and it had huge followers in US. It suddenly got
right,
popular, and it and the financial effect it had on the sport. Suddenly, there's a lot of influx. There's a huge set of people who want to watch. People are tuning into TVs. People are subscribing to channels to watch the F1 live telecast. There is a lot of ad revenues coming in. There's a lot of merchandise being purchased. There's a lot of fans being created for these teams, which not been done before. So suddenly there is a lot of people coming in, and people in sports equivalent to money, right? More the eyeballs, greater the revenue. So it's a unique case of a documentary creating a financial change in the sporting ecosystem, right?
right.
So yeah, I
So
think Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not following this as much as you probably. Like, when you say F1, is it just the cars, or does it also include like what I remember as the game MotoGP, where it used to be a bike? Are those two different things?
So these are two different things, obviously, because F1 is specifically it's a term called for the top tier racing of the
Right,
specific F1 cars, right?
right,
Um, so and whereas MotoGP is two wheeler racing, sports
right.
bike racing. It's a different organization, different sport altogether. Um, so F1, this documentary does exactly this, right? Where people who have no idea about what motor car racing is all about, it
Ah,
gives the insight into what goes into that, the technical aspects of things, the drivers, what they go through, where they're coming from, the emotions they go through when they're driving. How do they survive so much pressure? Literally, right? As in, you're experiencing. I think maybe I'm wrong here, but so much of gravitational force equivalent to traveling to space or going underwater. So
right,
so you actually lose a lot of weight after a race. So how do you cope up with that sort of physically demanding exercise? How do you cope up with the pressure to succeed among this elite group of 20 people who are racing? And it's not like you're
right.
racing with people in the same car, right? The cars are different, their strengths and their weaknesses are different.
Hmm.
So somebody who's a great driver for a certain car may not be a great driver for another car. So it's about finding the right fit, driver car fit as well. And yeah, so it was it was so captivating in that way because you're hearing people talking about their lives, their lives in the race and outside of race. So yeah, I think that way it really humanizes those people. Uh,
Right. I think it definitely sounds something I need to watch based
yeah,
on my knowledge.
yes.
Where can one find this? Is this Amazon
Netflix.
Prime?
This is
Netflix?
Netflix. Netflix. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Um, yeah, that's great.
do you have any recommendations before we sign off?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So for me, I think listening to podcasts, I found
Yes. You're the
one more.
podcast guru. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is podcast Inception. Yeah. So,
Uh,
recommending another podcast called Vartalab, which
oh
is
yes.
which is an very interesting podcast, and it's largely just two friends having a conversation, just like us.
Just like us. Yeah.
Yeah, so it has Naveen, who was one of the co-hosts,
Uh-huh.
and I think what's the other guy's name? How am I forgetting this? Um, wait, hold on.
That's okay. We can post it in the show notes later. Uh,
Sorry, Akash. Yeah, Akash and
Akash.
Naveen. This
Akash and
is,
Naveen. Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
Akash and Naveen, they both have these conversations, which are largely very casual, and that's what I like about it. They
Mm.
share stories around, sort of life they're having, and specifically the episodes of this particular podcast where there are these recent comedians that you'll find,
Mm.
for example, Sumit Saurav, or yeah. So definitely
Mm.
check that out. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely something which interested me in this last one week. And
Where can the
yeah,
listeners find this?
any any podcasting platform, starting from
Yeah.
YouTube, you can. I
Yeah.
prefer the Google podcast, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
the best
It
platform
is
that I would suggest. But you
very
can go to
simple and
Spotify.
intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You can also go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're an iOS user, which
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I would. But anyway, that
You
was
never know. You never know. We might have listeners from US. You never know.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And let's not let's not piss off any sponsors. Like Apple
Right.
is going to sponsor us, but okay. Of positivity. And
Yes.
one more recommendation of podcast, if I have
Yeah.
the opportunity to, I would say Cyrus says it's one
Yeah.
of the in-house podcasts of IVM, which
Yes.
usually is something which I really like with some specific guest. I think
Yeah.
that's a combination you'll figure out when you start listening to it.
Yes. I think
Uh,
in
hmm.
my mind, Cyrus Says would be the ultimate comedy podcast out there. Indian comedy podcast out there for sure. English based, as in in English language. I don't think Cyrus Says has any rivals. in terms of
Definitely. I think
pure entertainment factor. Yeah.
it's one of the more consistent ones also. Like they keep
Yeah.
coming up with new episodes, and that's a factor which adds in a long run. But
Yeah.
what would you like to recommend?
I think I have I've had enough of recommendations. But I think if I'm to recommend a podcast, it would be one that I listened this week would be Farnham Street. Farnham Street is a podcasting channel that covers a lot of areas: behavioral economics, management, philosophy. It's usually done in interview format, and I really love it because it throws up a lot of insights that otherwise you wouldn't recognize, otherwise you wouldn't take notice. And yeah, and it's a slightly longer format podcast. It's usually ranges between 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So what I would do is I would break it up and listen to it when I am either doing my work, housework, or
Right.
working out, or traveling. So yeah. So
Nice.
usually, in 3 parts or 4 parts, I would finish it. But yeah, I would recommend this to everybody. Farnham Street, and they have a newsletter also.
Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. So awesome. That's all from our side, I think, on this
Yes.
episode of
Return of Content
Content
Factory.
Factory. Yes.
Yes.
So
So reach us
yeah.
out. Where should the listeners find us?
They should find us nowhere.
Come on, you shouldn't say that. We should be
Sorry.
saying everywhere, everywhere, all at
Everywhere,
once,
yeah. I mean,
everywhere, all the time, all the once.
yeah, I mean, sure. You can find us. I mean, you can find me on Instagram,
Yeah.
Rudresh Dahiya. That's my Instagram username,
Hmm.
or on Twitter, Branham Effect. If
Hmm.
you're up for Elon Musk new revelations, um, go for it. And LinkedIn also, just like search. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. What about you? Where
So
can
I
people
I
find you?
am I am there on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Gautam J, GoutamJay, and we have a Content Factory Instagram page also. Just type this is
Yes.
Content Factory. And I'm on Twitter also. My Twitter handle is Gautam JB, GoutamJaybe, Gautam JB. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. Just type my name, you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. So reach out to me there, and don't forget to subscribe to our Content Factory podcast either in Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to the podcast from. Also, we are
Yes.
offering our newsletters. So go to use this Google Content Factory Substack. You will find our newsletter there. Subscribe to it. We are releasing it. We are trying to release it um, um, twice in every month. Trying to bring out all the great recommendations for you. I and RD are working so hard on it, right, RD?
Yes. In
Yeah.
short, guys, just like Google everything
Yes.
you can.
Google
Just
everything you can, and yeah,
yeah,
find out these.
yeah.
And yeah, of
We
course, you can
out
reach out
we
to us.
outsource this job to our listeners, but
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, Elon will do a good job. Uh, anyway, signing
Yeah.
off.
Signing off then.
Yes. All
Bye
right
bye.
then. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Have a good week. Bye. Bye, guys.